good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. As you see today, the topic of this event is going to be compliance consideration for manufacturing SMEs in China. My name is Filippo Pallaroni, and I'm the Training Center Coordinator at the USME Center. This is going to be the agenda of today. As you can see, it's going to be pretty dense, but I hope that the event can be as interesting as it was when we planned it originally. After welcome remarks from me and Florian, we're going to have, sorry, it was a little bit too French, maybe German is better. We're going to have a keynote speech from Ivy Gu from Desenshira that's going to talk about the compliance management in key operational processes when manufacturing in China from a financial perspective. After that, we're going to have Dominic that's going to basically cover the topic of ESG compliance. And then, moderated by Florian, after that, we are going to have a panel discussion that's going to see the two panelists that introduced the two keynote speeches before ending with a quick Q&A with both questions from online audience and in-present people. So, before I leave the floor to Florian for a quick introduction of the European Chamber, let me introduce the USME Center. So, the USME Center basically is a project that started in 2010 when the European Commission decided to fund us in order to provide help for SMEs. As you can see in the name of the center, we have SME as the core of our functions, because we know that compared to big corporations, it's very hard for SMEs to access the amount of information that you need in order to navigate a complex market such as China. Therefore, through the support of the Commission and DG Grow in particular, we started this project that is now in this fourth phase that's going to conclude in 2025 in June. And as you can see here, we have four main consortium partners. Two of them are based here in China. One of them is the European Chamber, hence we are here today. The other one is the Italian Chamber of Commerce, while based in Europe, in particular in Milan, the Italy-China Council Foundation, and in Portugal, in Lisbon, the Sociedade Portuguesa de Inovação, while at the same time we also have two associated partners that are Trade Promotion Europe and the EU-China Business Association. But what does the center do? And this is basically the conclusion of my quick introduction of the center. We help SMEs. But how do we do that? Well, in the first place, we have a self-diagnosis tool that you can find online where European SMEs can try to, let's say, have a first direct challenge with a set of questions that we've prepared so that they can understand whether they are fit or not for the Chinese market or how to navigate it properly. Second, we have knowledge. Knowledge means basically preparing reports, shares information, and try to, in a way, intercept all the concerns that SMEs might have in order to reply in a hastily manner so that they can better improve their knowledge on the Chinese market. The third service that we offer is advice. Basically, we have a set of in-house experts that all SMEs can consult for free, because these services are all for free since it's a European project. And basically, they can receive in a timely manner answers based on their main concerns, for example, if there is a change in regulation or on topics such as compliance. Then we have training. That's precisely what we're doing here today, and I'm in charge of this specific part for what concerns China, and it means basically organizing hybrid workshops in which we can tackle different topics that can be from compliance to cross-border data flow to registration for food and beverage exporting companies. And finally, we have the advocacy platform in which we try to bridge the concerns of SMEs to the government, and we try to help solve the most important matters that are hindering the operation of SMEs in China. So that was it for a quick introduction of the USME Center. I leave now the floor to Florian that can introduce the work of the European Chamber.
Right, so my name is Florian Hubelsberger. I'm here today on behalf of the European Chamber of Commerce of the Nanjing chapter. The European Chamber is an organization already established in the year 2000, and now we already have over 1,700 members all over China, with 26 specific working groups where the member companies work together on discussing and solving issues in regulatory affairs, in business challenges, and so on. And the European Chamber also operates different offices, basically all over China. So in most of the cities where a lot of European companies are convening together, the European Chamber has an office and can also support there absolutely locally. One of the great things about the European Chamber is that it is being accepted from both sides, from the Chinese side and the European side, as an official voice. So we can help here in bridging basically the boundaries between both countries. We follow here the ABC approach. The A is advocacy, so we advocate as European Chamber towards the Chinese government, but also to the European side, and that includes also high-level meetings with high-level government officials. So we do get access to channels where a single company usually cannot get to. At the same time, we try to influence the development of government legislation and also contribute to drafting advocacy letters to the government. And here you see the numbers. We do that quite actively. The second thing is what we do is business intelligence. So we collect information in the Chinese market and distribute this business intelligence to the companies. So I think it absolutely makes sense in the cooperation. We have very much shared goals with the EU SME Center. And some of the documents that we use, or some of the tools that we use, are, for example, here the business confidence study, which in my opinion is a great tool also to make people in Europe to understand how everything is working here, next to getting a market sounding, whether the own impression about the current market development is correct or not. We also publish a position paper. We have a regular, I would say, newspaper magazine. We have a website, we have newsletters, and so on. So again, a lot of business intelligence information incoming from that side. Last but not least, we have community. In the end, community is also an important part for us, where we organize meetings, where people can meet, can exchange information, but also sometimes just to have fun and celebrate the successes. Or if it sometimes doesn't go that well, at least find some people who maybe share the same challenges to get rid of a heavy heart. But indeed, you can find also quite some good friends within the community of the European Chamber as a private person. Last but not least, as mentioned before, the EU-CCC is not only acknowledged from European and Chinese side as an official voice, but also it is supported by really, really big companies. So in the end, the companies are steering the direction also of the European Chamber with advice, sometimes also share information, bring insights that we then afterwards can distribute again to the members. If there are any questions in the end, feel free to contact me after the meeting. Otherwise, I would hand back to Filippo. Thank you.
Okay, so now I think that you understand why we are partner in this, especially considering the capillary presence of the European Chamber all over China. So now I think that we can start with the first keynote presentation. It's going to be delivered by Ivy Gu from Shira, and as I was saying before, the topic is basically compliance from a financial perspective and of course within the Chinese market. So Ivy, the floor is yours, please.
Hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining our seminar today about the topic of compliance management in key operational process. So I think compliance management is always a very hot topic, especially for the foreign invested company in China. So it actually involves a lot of aspects, such as legal compliance, accounting, financial compliance, IT and HR compliance. So today we will mainly focus on the key operational process compliance management. So we would select two operational circles for discussion today. One is the sales operational circle. The other is procurement process and cash disbursement. So let's start with a very general introduction of the compliance management. So company compliance management, it refers to a set of internal process and policies which help to ensure the company operation adhere to legal compliance and internal standards. So it involves a lot of activities across various functions such as sales, procurement, warehouse, cash, and etc. So the purpose of compliance management, why we need to pay attention on the compliance management. Actually, the compliance management, it can help us to ensure the company adheres to relevant regulations and avoid potential risk and legal issues. And it also can help to identify and mitigate the risk related with operational, financial, or even bad reputation of the company. And standardizing the operational process can help to ensure an efficient and constant operation process. And the compliance management also can help to establish the approval process of the company, and which can lead into accountability and also a good decision making. And lastly, it can demonstrate its integrity to the company's customer, supplier, and its shareholder by adherence to the relevant regulations and the laws. So potential compliance risk. Here we list some risks about the compliance. One is operational risk. I think it is raised from the internal process and procedures within the operational circles, and it could be due from some unreasonable design of the internal process or inefficient performance of some even well-designed process. Risk, financial risk, is related with the financial health of the company. It could be raised from the bankruptcy, financial insolvency, or even some fraud or embezzlement or employee inappropriation behavior. A reputational risk is raised from bad reputation of not only the company, but also its client, supplier, or its shareholders. So it's related with some ethical problems or some in-compliance behavior to the laws and regulations. Social risk, it could be raised from some labor issue, human rights issue, or in compliance with social responsibility rules. A natural disaster risk is very easy to understand. Is, for example, like earthquake or floods, which can disrupt the company's delivery of production and its business operation. So how to mitigate this compliance risk? Here we briefly list 3 aspects. One is developing relevant compliance policies and procedures, including the national, the provisional or local regulations, and also maybe some industry and contractor regulations. And enhance the internal control of key business circles. So we will talk about this later in later slides and separate in 2 circles. Monitoring and compliance review practices, so we can gather some data related with the compliance and evaluate its compliance with relevant rules, also assess its adherence to relevant rules. And also I think continuous review and supervision is also very important. So I think we can set up a system for the continuous supervision and review, and we should keep an eye on the awareness program and training for relevant people. Okay, so let's move on to the next session about the sales operational circle. We will talk about 3 aspects of this circle: customer background check, operational flow chart, and key control points. So when we're having a new customer, we suggest you to make a background check of the company on some public platform, such as the National Enterprise Credit Information Publicity System, and also some third-party system, such as 天眼查 or 企查查. Although maybe we believe that the information on this system could be limited, relatively limited, especially if we want to understand the financial health check or the financial situation of the customer, because we cannot obtain the financial data on this platform of one company, because company usually they would choose not open to public when for their financial records when they do such annual reporting. But I think there's still some very useful and helpful information on this system, which can bring us a general understanding of the company system, of the company's information. For example, we can have a general information of the company. We can understand their business goal, of course, and also their investor and the investment, their capital investment, which is also very important. And we can understand their tax credit rate to see if there are any tax issue, potential tax issue or risk there, and also the ongoing lawsuit to understand if they have any potential law issue and law risk. Also, the government penalty records is also available for us to understand on this system. Lastly, the potential personal relationship, because we can know the legal rep and the investor of the company on this system. And also we can understand this person's other investment situation. Also, if he or she plays a role in the management in other company, actually such information is also very helpful for us to understand the company's potential or the group structure. Okay, so the operational flowchart of the sales circle, I think we believe that different industry or different companies, they should have different flowchart. So this is actually a very general flowchart for us to take a reference and a basic understanding. So generally, when the sales department staff will receive a request from a customer, we would make a quotation plan. And of course, it should be reviewed and checked by the sales in charge person. And if everything is smooth and we already made an initial agree or confirmation with the client, a sales contract or sales orders will be prepared and reviewed and approved by a certain level of the management before sending to the customer for final confirmation and signature. So when the goods is ready, the warehouse staff will be responsible to make the goods delivery from the warehouse to the plant of the client. And all the related documents and information should be sent to financial department for their accounting bookkeeping purpose. And the financial accountant will issue the certain invoice sent to the customer for AR collection. Okay, the key control point here. So we know that the relevant sales order or sales contract, sales price should be reviewed and approved before the process. And also the logistics department will be responsible for the delivery, goods delivery from the warehouse to the client's plant. So when the clients receive the goods, a receiving note should be prepared and signed by the customer for their goods receiving confirmation. So when sales return happens, usually we would suggest the client to fill in or prepare the goods, the sales return forms before some days after they receiving the goods. And the refund can be processed after certain review and approved is done by a certain level. And of course, such sales return terms should be carefully prepared and agreed on the sales order or sales contract before. So all the documents should be prepared and kept by the accountant for their bookkeeping purpose. So these are actually, we think, is key process. It's not key control point. Control point, it means at some point during the process, the performance on this point can help to enhance the compliance management and mitigate the risk. So for example, we already mentioned a lot of review and approval process during the circles, but actually the key point here is this review and approval can be traced. It means orally approved is not a control point. It should be even an email or signature, it is the control point. Authorization, so it means the different level of approval for different process should be authorized to different level of management. System control, because we believe that most company will rely on the system more or less, even as a whole ERP system, or we just use several functions within the ERP, procurement or sales, or even we just use a financial system. It's all system. That makes the system control more and more important for our compliance management. So actually it's another topic here. So I will not expand too much on this side, but I would like to emphasize one potential issue or potential risk during the system control. It's the backdoor control. So backdoor usually means we would leave some backdoor in the system. Usually it's only the IT guy will be authorized to make some action through the backdoor. So actually we can regard this as an extra access to the system. It's not just in the general operation in the system. So actually we would need to focus more on such extra access of the system. Special control under certain stance, for example, like accounting closing, usually for a system, we cannot go back to adjust the historical records in a system for accounting records in a system. But under some special situation, an adjustment is very necessary. So how to control this special process and the special situation is need to mainly focused and well prepared. Okay, so procurement process and cash disbursement. For aspect we will talk about. One is vendor selection, the procurement flow chart, key control point, and the cash disbursement. So vendor selection. When we aim to have a new supplier, vendor selection rules should be followed. Of course, we believe, especially for manufacturer company, the key supplier for the key raw material for manufacturer company generally is relatively stable. We will not change it usually if there's no special situation. So actually, key vendors, the vendor selection is not a daily operation, but it's very key because the vendor selection process usually is one of the area with high risk possibility. So we can make a background check of the vendor, and of course, certain people will be sent to the vendor site for a sample test and investigation, and a formal evaluation paper and form should be prepared well by these people and be authorized and approved by a certain management level. Okay, so procurement flow chart. When the inventory exceeds the buff, warehouse buff, usually the purchase request will be made by the procurement staff. The price and also the certains will be reviewed by the in-charge person, and the purchase contract and orders will be prepared and reviewed, approved by certain people before sent to the supplier for the final confirmation. So if everything is okay, the the goods will be sent to us by the supplier, and all the documents and the information will be sent to financial accountant for the bookkeeping. And then when we receive the invoice, we will arrange the payment accordingly. So that's a very general flow chart for procurement process. Okay, so for the key control point for the procurement process, as we mentioned before, the purchase plan or the contract, also the purchase price should be well prepared and agreed. And also when the goods goods is received by us, GRN goods receive notes will be prepared and signed by the warehouse staff, and also the quality will be checked by the QC department. The QC and also the warehouse staff will all sign on the GRNs for the confirmation, and the GRNs will be sent to financial department for their records. So there are several aspects we would like to emphasize for the key operational contract, for the key control point. We know that the quality and the quantity should be checked well when receive the goods. But one thing that could miss is the specification of the goods. Because we meet such situation before. So one of our client, they have a very long-term supplier. During one delivery, the supplier, they change the specification, the package and the specification. So maybe in the past it's 3 pieces in one bag, but from this delivery, it's changed to 2 pieces, 1 bag, but the price is not changed. Maybe the supplier did not realize it. It's unconsciously behavior, maybe. So when the warehouse staff, they receive these goods, because they already a very long-term relationship, they are very familiar with the supplier and the goods, so they missed to check the specification and the package of this delivery, which actually nearly led to a big loss of the company. So this issue was found during a third-party stock take, and it's avoided. So actually, it's very important for us to also not only the quality and the quantity, also the specification and the package of the goods. Segregation of duties is very easy to understand. For example, like the staff we send to the potential client side for the investigation, he or she will prepare the such vendor selection forms. So the reviewer and approval should be another one. It's a segregation of duties. Invoice received and reconciliation with accounts payable. It's a responsibility of the accountant. Especially for the situation that the invoice issue is late after the goods receiving. So it will be a timing difference between the goods receiving and invoice issuing. When the accountant receive the invoice, it should be very careful to check the existing the goods actually received, and also if there's any reconciliation between the records. Cash disbursement. When the payment application, I think it's very easy to understand. So the staff will apply for the payment. He or she will prepare the payment application form, confirmed and agreed and approved by a certain level of the management before the process. And the payment will be made by the cashier, and also the accounts bookkeeping will be made according to all these documents. So for the payment application, the segregation of duties, I think it's easy to understand. The review approval should be segregated with the application, with the payment application. And the payment, especially for online bank process, usually there will be 2 bank duties. One is for performance, one is for approval. So we will suggest that 2 different level of people keep these 2 duties. One for maybe the performance will be kept by the cashier for the payment application, and the other approval UT, it can be kept by even the general manager. or even the headquarters. Some of our clients, they would rather like to let the headquarters abroad to keep this UT. So this management, they can be aware of the performance behavior of the company. Accounts bookkeeping. Also, the chat reconciliation work is very, very important for the accountant bookkeeping. So all these relevant documents should be carefully checked and reconciled by the accountant, because it will be the last stage of this process. All these documents will be sent to the accountant for their process and reconciliation. Okay, I think that's it for most of my part. So this is a general introduction of our company. So Design Associates, we have more than 13 years experience, especially focused on Asia market for the advisory service to our client. And we provide a one-stop solution to our client. You can see that on the right side is our service scope, like the establishment, legal, accounting, HR, IT, audit. So we think it's a one-stop solution for our company, for our clients, sorry. And we have more than 35 offices. Most of them were based in Asia. Okay, I think that's it. In the middle is our company's WeChat. Welcome to follow our articles, and it will be updated daily on a daily basis, and about the industry change or the most updated regulations. And this is my WeChat. Welcome to contact me if you have any question. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ivy, for your presentation. I hope that you got some important insights that you can also apply in your daily operations. Next, we have Dominic, so please, the floor is yours. Of course.
All right. So, first of all, hi, everyone. Is this my presentation here? Yeah, there we go. So my topic today is a little bit different in the sense of we're talking about just one aspect probably of compliance. It's called ESG Compliance, Managing Regulatory Compliance Excellence in China for a Sustainable Future. Let me start by just reading out a short quote. Here it says, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it." Who agrees on this one? Yeah, we'll look into, yeah, some are raising their hands. What about this one? Corporate culture matters. How management chooses to treat its people impacts everything, for better or for worse. Who thinks this? Who can agree to this one? I also see a couple of hands. And what about this one? The brands that will be big in the future will be those that tap into the social changes that are taking place. Who thinks this is also a true statement? Yeah, I see some hands. Basically, what you're reading out here is what we believe is an example for ESG, environment, social, and governance. We're talking about something in the next couple of minutes about a certain kind of compliance that's new to the field, a certain kind of compliance that a lot of people are talking about these days because it seems to be quite big also on the horizon. Let's have a look. We're going to have a look at ESG compliance. Why is that there? What is it? What requirements are we seeing? So basically what? We're looking at compliance management. We heard already a little bit from Ivy, what compliance management does. And also have a look at the end. How do you deal with this? Is there certain strategy things that we can apply with our companies? Here, I'm trying to show you a bit what is ESG in a nutshell. You see here the three aspects, E, S, and G, and you see it's a kind of assessment of companies, or as a kind of view on companies that is wholesome. It's the whole company that is part of this ESG development. You're looking at the E, you see climate stability, natural resource, waste management, innovation. It's also big topics in companies. We see at the governance part, we see transparency. We heard already from Ivy about compliance. It's actually a lot about transparency. Yeah? We're hearing about anti-bribery, corruption, corporate governance, risk management. We also just heard this also from Ivy regarding how compliance works in companies. And the social part, human capital management, diversity, value chain, and society. It's still quite big words, but what does it mean? Let's have a look at this one. The Frankfurt School of Business, they try to find topics within each of these fields in ESG. When we look at the left, you see that here it says climate change, environmental CO2 emissions. A lot of companies are now trying to do what? Look at their footprint. So there's involvement of, hey, we need to be really aware of what is our ecological footprint, and then also try to assess it. You also see things like here it says, for example, renewable versus fossil energies. It's about biodiversity, water pollution, land, and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very direct impact also on many companies on their bottom line. This is where ESG is focusing on. Look at the social. Here we talk about human rights, employee rights. We have occupational health and safety. I will also talk about this a little bit. We heard this also on Wednesday already, with the position paper. We heard that EHS is quite a big topic also here in China. There's also specific issues like animal testing, weapons, intoxicants, and so on. Yeah? So trying to assess also what are companies doing on a social level. Yeah? And then we're seeing on the right part the governance, overall strategy, transparency again. Yeah? Compensation, management of ESG risks, risk management, we also heard from Ivy is one incremental part of compliance, and corruption management system, and so on. There's one interesting fact when we talk about this here in China, and our company Etico is also here in Nanjing, but we are currently in 27 countries, and we talk a lot about compliance. Some aspect points out, especially when we talk about the S. You just see there was a little change. Yeah? When we talk about ESG in China, it's more towards society, the understanding, than towards the individual. That's maybe an interesting idea, that here we talk also about a compliant being socially good towards everybody else, not just towards the individual, but to all society. We tried at Etico, we tried to define this and say, like, so what can we do about a definition for ESG? And I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out a couple of things. What you're seeing here, first of all, you see on the top it says legal requirements. ESG is a legal development. Parts of it is you find in laws, most of it you find in laws, in different kinds of laws. So we are talking about, this is not something you may choose to do. This is something you have to do. Maybe not all of it, but I will get to this later. It's for companies or investments. We're not talking about this is something just for any kind of organization. It's basically, it's purely focused and very strictly focused on companies worldwide. It's an understanding we've seen in more than just one country. It's a global development. You see also it says the assessing, yeah? So it's about assessment. It's basically checking. It's how are you doing in your companies? Are you doing this correctly? What are you doing about this one? When we look at the European Union, the CSRD reporting for big companies will start next year for the early ones. And you see, they're asking, what are you doing in these fields? They're not asking so far, are you doing it well? Because we are still in the assessing phase. We want to understand what is good, what is bad, in this sense. It talks about long-term value creation. ESG, managing ESG is not about what's happening tomorrow. It's about strategies. It's about understanding what is my impact on the long term. What am I doing as a company? Yeah? What are my products? Yeah? My supply chain? Yeah? Who are my clients? So what is my impact on this planet? And we're seeing here aligning with international standards. It's not so much about ESG saying, how, you know what, we came up with a plan. We believe ESG is something like this or that. ESG, a lot of people already have put some thought into this, and standards have evolved over the last couple of years already. And let's have a look at this one. I hope we can read it. There's a few types of things that we're seeing on the horizon. You see on the left, you see reporting frameworks and standards. So we do have standards already in place. But you as a company, you may wonder, do I have to follow all of these? Surely not. Because they're industry specific. The ESG can be very, very different talking about a chemical company or talking about a company maybe who is a bank and working in finance. the regulations, what you're doing, your impact, yeah, is much different. That's why we're seeing also when we talk about frameworks and standards, we're talking about very, very different types of assessment. Look at the corporate rating agencies. The ratings, we know them quite well from finance. So we have a lot of ratings about AAA ratings, A, B, B, and so on ratings worldwide regarding certain, maybe even financial models, ETFs, and so on and so forth. We see here there's also rating agencies that do this on a production level. They want to understand, so what is your impact when you produce your goods? And they will try to give you an assessment and rate you. And why do we do this as companies? Because sometimes customers are asking for it, or our clients are asking for it. And especially thinking about CSRD reporting in Europe, it's the big companies who need to be asking their suppliers in the future about this. We're not talking about this is just, you can come up with your own standard, your own framework, yeah? Your own assessment. Hey, we're doing good, just have a look. No, they want to try to see, like ISO standards, hey, what are you following a certain standard? Yeah? Are you like others, or even better? We also see a regulatory reporting, and when we talk about ESG, a lot of companies, ESG is not a matter where companies say like, hey, give me more of this. And the reason is because it requires a lot of reporting. And CSRD reporting, it sounds good from the start because it says, hey, let's have a look at what are you doing in your company. But when we talk to companies in Europe, in Germany, about this CSRD reporting, we hear a lot of complaints about it's so much work to do, so many things to fill out, so many assessments to do internally, and that's just the start. So in many areas in the world, we see companies have to follow such reporting, especially of a certain size. And you may say, we're SMEs over here, right? So an SME, oh, I'm not that big, I don't have to do it. In most of these reportings, it says, please also take care that your supply chain is regarded with the same aspects. So you may be at first looking, doesn't really work for us, we don't have to do it. Maybe your clients will be asking you to give them that information that they require because they have to follow the reporting. And also there's some initiatives, some players in the market that sort of define, they want to bring in some ideas how ESG should be worked out. A lot of them actually coming from the more ecological side, but there's some more now also evolving from, let's say social aspects and also more governmental, or like how to govern a company. However, one of the biggest questions we were still hearing is the following. Is it mandatory, or can I choose to not do it? And I would like to give you a bit of a picture. There is aspects that are mandatory, and there are also aspects that are non-mandatory. And when we look at it, we looked at China. You see here on the E part, the environmental part, basically look at the focus and the goals that we're seeing already in China. We're seeing there's a carbon neutrality goal. It says here, peak carbon emissions by 2030, achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. So that's a pure ecological goal, being carbon neutral. Pollution control, there's a blue sky action plan. Biodiversity, protect the ecosystem through the ecological conservation red line. And also eco-finance at the Hong Kong Exchange already 2016, they implemented the so-called building green finance system. Also have ETFs that only work, like financial tools that only work with companies who have a certain rating regarding ESG already. Let's look at what are we doing on the social side. Here, labor rights, enhance workplace safety and worker welfare as per the labor contract law and work safety law. You see, this is already going towards laws and regulations, and they are already implementing these. Here in China, in Europe, everywhere in the world, you will see that lots of aspects of labor rights are getting pushed into laws and regulations. We're also seeing poverty alleviation and also corporate social responsibility, aspects of companies that they have to follow in this regard. And governance. In China, we have a unique corporate social credit system that rates also companies on how they're doing. But we have anti-corruption, data security. Cybersecurity law was mentioned also, I think, on a Wednesday during the event. It's a law we have the GDPR law in the European Union. defining cybersecurity. Here we have another law, but trying to understand how are we dealing with information on a governance point of view. In China, let's look at this one. There's a new company law. Yeah? We like new laws, right? Yeah? Every company now has to look at this one as well. Here it says, for the first time, we have to fully consider as a company our ecological environmental protection and undertake social responsibility. It's in the law. It's not an opinion. We have had opinions here in China. Would be good to do this. We are past this. The company law is very, very straightforward. Companies have to do this. And it says here also, publish social responsibility reports. It's in the law. Look at this. It's not just one article in the law. Here it says also, for the first time, the company law states that enterprise must be concerned with the public interest of society. It becomes basic law. And if you have things like this mentioned in basic law, the next step is we're seeing initiatives. And we're seeing them already in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Suzhou. Shanghai has an action plan here, this year, March 2024, already saying enhance ESG capabilities of companies with foreign ties. Build an ESG ecosystem by 2026. 2 years. And Shanghai companies have to follow a certain regulation and have to show what they're doing. Beijing implementation plan, awesome. Let's target here 70% of ESG disclosure rate for listed companies by 2027. This thing is coming. It's there. It's real. And also in Suzhou, here first ESG program for an industrial park. There's the development of a digital ESG platform even. So you see there's lots of developments happening all around this ESG realm that we're looking at. But what is there? Is there anything else we have to do? Let's look at this. This is not ESG, to be honest. This is EHS. This is one of our companies with 2 sites in Jiangsu province. This is just a third of the laws and regulations they have to follow for EHS, environment, health and safety. It's not like you can start in 2026 because in Shanghai they talk about this, or maybe Beijing in 2027. EHS is an incremental part, environment, health and safety of an ESG strategy. You have to be aware of the laws that you have to follow already. And we also heard on Wednesday, companies are saying there's more audits happening. External audits. Auditors are coming to your companies. They want to see what you're doing about this one. They want to understand, do you know what you need to be doing? And Ivy pointed it out, compliance is specific. It's not about, hey, I have 20 law books here and I have to do all of it. No, you don't. Site specific. You have to do things according to what you're doing at a certain place in China. And when we look at this, this is sort of the approach, how you can bring mandatory and non-mandatory compliance or ESG compliance together. First of all, you must be really well aware of what are the laws, the legal areas, that for what you as a company, what you are doing, what's your product, what's your service, what type of laws are the most important one for you. You have to be good at these. You have to know about these ones. You have to know the requirements. And then, is it enough to just know your requirements? No, you have to document. You have to show. Like Ivy also said, it's not enough to say something, you have to have the least email. You have to be really aware. Compliance requires documentation, always. And this is why here you see all these types of laws. And when we talk about, like to our clients here or worldwide, the first assessment is always, what are the things that we are focusing on firstly when we talk about legal areas? Because if I give every requirement that you have by law into a system, you will never be able to do your normal work again. We're talking about 10,000s of requirements. But be good at the ones that have the most impact, the most risk for your company. And for most it is EHS. EHS is the start. On top of it, this is where non-mandatory, and we look at code of conducts. They define what you stand for as a company. These are also rules, but your internal rules. Put them on top. Sometimes you're doing things better than maybe the law tells you to do. It would be bad if you have to document both, right? So this is what systems can do for you. They bring a mandatory world and a non-mandatory world together, and you must only maybe document it once in your whole organization. So we believe this is your challenge, especially as companies. We believe it's about to manage and comply with ever-increasing requirements from laws, guidelines, internal specifications, directives, approvals, and contracts. And you also have to do it on time. This is quite a challenge. Thinking about that, we have maybe even followed the ISO standards. They tell you that maybe there's a certification happening. That's also a requirement that you have to fulfill. And this is why you must, as companies, especially SME companies, because big companies can maybe give a lot of people for doing this job. SMEs must be really well organized to get all of this done. And compliance, ESG compliance, EHS compliance, it doesn't make a difference if you're like a little shop on the street or if you're a big company. It's just the amount of requirements that may be different. But still, you must be compliant. And a solution to it, as your way forward here, is maybe to focus on a simple approach. And I will tell you a little bit about this. A transparent system. Transparency is quite the thing. Because the biggest problem that we still see when it comes to compliance is that an auditor is finding out an issue. A company was not aware of it. People have not been talking about it. We didn't know. Or we thought someone else was responsible. And there was nobody responsible. This is why being transparent, also share responsibilities. We've had clients in the past where we helped them with our digital system. And then we realized a system is only as good as the culture, the compliance culture in a company can also work with the system. If everybody believes compliance is just for management and points towards the CEO, you will not get to a good result because you must share it. And by the way, also in China, but in most countries that we're seeing in the world, there's a very simple rule. A CEO's job is to find the right person, given the right budget, enough time and access to do their job properly. Then also that CEO is not regarded as being liable anymore for that particular task at that moment. So let's share responsibilities. Be up to date, be digital, because it's just too much. If you just work on paper, that's not going to bring you far. And try to be efficient with managing everything that's going on. The thing is, how do we do this? There certainly are different approaches. I just mentioned we believe in a simple approach, and we believe in tasks. People understand tasks. Hey, do this, do that. And what are we doing is the following. We look at the law, and the law is written quite complicated. And even if you have a company lawyer and he has to look at 10,000 requirements, it's hard for this person to tell everyone in the company. He will be running around sweating and trying to find the right people. This is why we believe you must focus on tasks that everybody can understand. This is what we are doing, for example. We are looking at the law, we are translating or we are writing from the articles easy, understandable tasks. Like this one here. It says where it's coming from, but here it says implement a monitoring system for confined space operations. Sometimes the law tells you some details to it. This is how someone in a company can take that job, can take the responsibility and build it up and document on it. Let's look at another example. Here it's also come from EHS. This is establish a monthly scheduling system for pressure vessel safety. And you also see this one. We've been to a company now this week who is doing software. I'm pretty sure they don't have a pressure vessel. Why should they document on it? So this is why you need to be specific, site specific. Only what applies to you. Also to make your task a bit less. It must be operational. You should be aware of this is what I need to do, and all the other regulations, requirements maybe not apply to me, and this is the way forward. This is the way to understand what is really necessary in your company. What else? Transparent and responsible. You see on the right, delegating compliance tasks in a company. We are still talking, even with big players, we're still talking about compliance and requirements, and what are they saying? Oh, we have an Excel file. Here we have lots of requirements in an Excel file, and this is one person in the company who has this file. And then they're trying to make sense of it. If you are able to take your requirements and give them to people who are actually doing the job, you will see it becomes everybody's responsibility. And that's a very simple way of going forward. And also on the left side, you see it must be your organization, the way your processes are, the way you look at it, what you're doing. Yeah? And maybe you work as a matrix, maybe there's different kinds of responsibilities or different units and so on and so forth. This is where you must understand maybe a different unit has different requirements than the production area, yeah? The sales office and so on and so forth. So this is how you should be, how we can, are we seeing there's benefit in looking also up that you find your organization also being built up in your compliance management. Yeah, was this correct? Just at the end about a bit of strategy, a bit of development. Many companies at the moment still believe, oh, we just want to follow what maybe an auditor's finding, or we're doing our best. And then we on the left side, short-term focus. If we see a problem, we fix it. That's what we're doing. Compliance is about somebody told us we cannot do so, let's fix it. And here in China, I think it's beautiful that you can still talk to the government, you can still talk to auditors and find ways together. That is good. But it's always trying to fix an issue. There's ways of saying, let's get in front of this. Let's have a look at compliance in a way of, can we define compliance for us in a company where it's not so much about our issues, our problems, it's actually we're trying to understand, trying to document, trying to be front runners, and thereby also having maybe a system that we can show to auditors and being fine with it without being all maybe nervous about this one. And we're seeing this already in many, many places in the world, also in China. We're seeing that there's companies who understand ESG, who understand EHS as a given. We want to be like this. That's the culture. We want to use this. We want to have our products being done in a certain way. We understand that customers are asking for products that are maybe produced in a certain way, or that people are treated in a certain way. The planet's been not overused of its material, and this is where there are certain steps that have been looked at in terms of ESG development, how you can become a leader, and thereby also actually work out that on the bottom line you will see it has a good impact in your company. A few milestones. How do I approach this thing in my company? I'm not going to read through all of these. I'm pretty sure we will send out also the presentation again. You see, at first they establish clear ESG goals. Yes, and you must come together and look at what is it that our company, what fits to our company when we talk about E, S, and the G. But if you look at the bottom on the right, it says here, monitor and manage your legal requirements. There's something you must already do by law. You can start with this. You don't have to look at the big picture first. You can start with what are our legal requirements, because this is something you have to do anyways, and then work from this. But you're seeing it's about also stakeholder engagement. It's about talking to your customers. It's talking to your investors. It's talking to your employees. Yeah? There's a lot of communication happening when we think about ESG compliance. In the end, I just want to give you one quick number here. It says in 2021, around 64% of central state-owned enterprises and around 50% of state-owned enterprises released already ESG reports in China, along with 23.5% of private enterprises. We just heard today that this number even went up in 2024, where it's around 80% of central state-owned enterprises released their own ESG reports, and around 40% of the private enterprises. We don't know to what detail these reports are, but we see with these numbers that they are aware we want to go down this way. So the question remains, and when do you start? Thank you. And if you have any questions, we're happy, I think, also in the panel to dig deeper into this whole matter. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dominic. Thank you very much, because I think that it's also very important that you pointing out the impact that this might have on SMEs. And to be frank, it's not something that I usually hear when I participate in conferences dealing with ESG. So really, thank you very much for pointing that out. While we wait for the setting of the panel discussion to be prepared, let me share with you an anecdote precisely on ESG. So at the USME Center at the end of September, we organized a mission that brought 9 European SMEs to China. And the focus of the mission was green technologies. And we went to Shanghai, Suzhou, and Chengdu. And to let you understand better the importance of ESG, once we visited the Suzhou Industrial Park, we took the delegation to an ESG building that Suzhou Industrial Park precisely set up in order to gather all companies dealing with ESG reporting, compliance, whatever, in order to have a company go to the building and let's say explore everything related to ESG in one place. So you can really understand how important it is, especially since the government decided to set it up and fill it with companies dealing with that. So now I think that we can start with the panel. I'll leave the floor to Florian, that's gonna be the moderator. So feel free to choose how to interact.
All right, I think we heard a little bit about ESG, we also heard about compliance, and now putting these two a little bit more together in the end. In the current global trend of supply chain restructuring and sustainable development, why do the small and medium manufacturing companies need to pay special attention to the integration of compliance management and ESG standards? And this question goes to both of you, so whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I think we already mentioned a lot about compliance management. There's a lot of purpose of the compliance management, and also there's some compliance risk nowadays. So I think firstly we can reduce the compliance risk, right? Because especially in the current economic situation, I think the compliance is more important in the current days. And also, I think we can also need to focus more on the internal control because it can help us to enhance the compliance management.
I mean, looking at SMEs, especially now these days, there are certain regulations, and I've been talking a little bit about the European Union already with this ESG reporting, but there's also new laws coming from outside of China. And these are including Supply Chain Act, for example, where we are seeing that big companies or even companies just buying from Chinese companies over here will meet certain requirements, compliance requirements within the supply chain. This means if an SME here wants to have access or wants to work with companies globally, they must show that they are compliant with certain regulations. I mean, this is not a choice in the sense. The choice is rather, do you want to be part of this global trend, and do you want to have that kind of access? Then you need to be doing it because the law requires you in maybe certain markets where you act. But on the other hand, I would also like to point out that we're always talking about compliance a little bit in the sense of, oh, this is something we need to do, and it costs us money, it costs us time. I'm pretty sure in every company, if someone raises the issue of compliance, it's not like people scream like, give me more of this. Yeah? However, if you meet in your company, let's say, look at ESG. ESG is saying we want to be good. We want companies that understand about our impact. And I think also if you follow such an understanding, you attract also good people to join, who wants to join your workforce. I think it's also, we heard about reputation. Companies that can say, and I'm not talking about like greenwashing, like just talk about it and we look closer than it's actually not happening. If you're able to implement and be open and transparent about these ideas, I certainly see, and especially for SMEs, that you become attractive, internally, externally. And this is where I think the sort of the key impact of this type of compliance is.
I'm going to skip yours because the next question goes to you, Ivy. But before we come to the question, I really like that how you made the jump from an optional requirement to basically mandatory to participate in a market. So it can become mandatory. The second thing that I was reminded of, I think it was Warren Buffett, and I hope I don't misquote, something like it takes 20 years to build up the reputation of a company and just 5 minutes to ruin it. And in the end, this can also be, of course, decisive for the business. Thank you. Ivy, from the perspective from the perspective of financial auditing, what do you think are the main challenges faced by small and medium manufacturing enterprises in implementing compliance management in key operational processes? And how should SMEs establish an effective compliance management system to ensure financial transparency and business compliance?
Okay, I think in practice, so I think the most challenging we are facing would be the balance between the cost and time consumed for the compliance purpose in the compliance process, right? Because when we talk about compliance, usually we would believe it will be very costly and the time will be spent because, like we mentioned before in our slides, review and approve is very important. So that means at least 2 roles should be involved in one process, right? So I think one potential solution could be a systematic solution. It's not, we are talking about it, it's not a big ERP or SAP system we mentioned. Nowadays we have a lot of other alternative selection, some small apps or small system with very limited cost. Actually, it's very useful for our compliance purpose. So we can also consider these useful apps or useful small systems. And also another solution could be, I think, continuous supervision is very important because people may start to get used to what they are doing in their daily operation. They kind of like, get ready to sign, approve. Maybe they only check some key items and just sign it. So that means continuous supervision and review maybe help us to find some potential risk in our process.
Thank you. That reminded me of what you just said. Of course, not every employee is going to shout hooray when there are more checks and so on going. I think additionally to the systems that should be as non-intrusive as possible in the daily processes, I think it's also really important to bring up a culture that accepts these kind of checks, not only to protect the manager, but also the employee themselves in the end. So all of that in the end, I think, can be quite a good combination. Dominic, maybe let's switch first. Thank you. Dominic, ESG standards are increasingly being valued globally. What successful cases of innovative strategies does your company have in helping the SMEs to achieve ESG compliance? How do these practices help businesses to achieve sustainable development goals?
I mean, what we are seeing with our clients is, let's say, actually we'll take on the aspect that Ivy just mentioned, is continuity. Because what we're seeing with companies is, it's not like companies are not compliant yet, in a sense. There are people, there are maybe EHS professionals, there are people in sales who do certain aspects already really well, and they do it actually by being compliant. But they have no systems of showing it. And the big change that we're seeing, especially also with SMEs, is there's this amount of first of all, is to be able to showcase. Yeah, we need to be able to show to our, it could be customers, it could be stakeholders, it could be maybe auditors coming in, this is what we're doing. And here is proof to it. But there's also a level of continuity in a sense of, you have people maybe who are changing in your workforce. You have different types of requirements because the law changes, or maybe your products are changing. Maybe you are now you're working in different markets, have a different type of clients. And to have a system where, and this is what we do, we provide like this type of continuity where we keep updating, and in our system every 2 months we're checking every legal requirement for you. Is there any change to it? Did your organization change? Because it's also organizational compliance. So sometimes not just about I have to do one thing, it's about the combination of things is what makes compliance, and not just one little individual task. And I think this is where tools like ours, but but in general, what SMEs can profit from is to find ways of showcasing, to be able to understand what is the law telling us, and also what are our internal requirements. And when I ask our clients sometimes, so what are you doing? I hear a lot. Hey, this is what we stand for. This is what we're doing. This is what we feel like really proud of. But if I ask them, so do you have this in any system? No, usually not. Yeah? This is just a given. But I think compliance is changing because especially auditors want to understand more about what are you doing, why are you doing this. Yeah? And it's not so much about just being audited, do I get a penalty and so on, but it's more, hey, I want to be aware, yeah? And to be able also to be fast in our response. Yeah? And I think this is where systems like ours come in.
As you might have recognized, I smiled a lot because I've seen quite some companies from the inside, and many of these companies were not able in the end to keep the documents updated. Basically, always when then the internal audit team or the external auditors came, then, oh yeah, we have a work instruction and everybody is being rewritten and changed and so on. So a system that is basically always up to date from the legal requirements, and then also informs the user that there have been some changes. I think this can really help a lot in dealing with the changes of internal and external requirements. Again, to both of you, so again, whoever wants to go first afterwards, do you think there's an inherent connection between compliance management and ESG practices? How can SMEs balance the relationship between compliance and sustainable development in practical operations?
Shall I understand? Okay. I think from one of the slides that I was showing is sort of giving away that answer, because I think it is the combination of what's mandatory, understanding what's mandatory, and also what's non-mandatory. And in this regard, I think this is the approach that we're seeing a lot. And we would, at this stage, we don't make a difference between there's this type of compliance and then there's ESG. It's a system. Yeah? And this is why when we talk about compliance, and also what Ivy was pointing out, there's so many, let's say, levels of or different perspectives onto compliance, but ESG is like a rooftop. And this is why looking at it from this point of view, I think we should be talking about there is compliance, meaning we want to understand what we need to do as a company, but we also want to understand what we stand for. I think that's the new sort of compliance. Compliance used to be something which is just legally driven. Yeah? Now it's also about being internally with your own goals, yeah? Being compliant with them. But overall, we are actually not making a difference between ESG compliance and other types of compliance.
Yeah. I think ESG is more like high level, right? So compliance management is more in practice. So you can see that we list a lot of control point or key control process. It's more like the company's daily operation or actual practice. So it's connection, right? Of course. And the compliance management, I think it's more practical from practical view. And we should. It's not just follow the laws or follow the rules. It's just actually it's more focused on operational efficiency. Yeah, this aspect.
Honestly, what both of you just said also before in the presentation, I love that. Especially what you said in the presentation, not every rule is equal, and that you have to prioritize in the end what is the really important one. And at least I would completely agree that certain rules, they're an absolute must, or you can shut down the business basically in China, while others, maybe you can't access certain markets if you don't fulfill them or are not that successful in the quotation, but really prioritizing here into the absolute must and everything what comes on top. I really like this approach personally. Again, to both of you, looking ahead, what new challenges and opportunities will the SME manufacturing companies face in compliance management and ESG practices? How should businesses prepare to cope with these changes and seize development opportunities?
Well, okay. So actually, in the current economic situation, to be honest, the pressure from the government becomes more and more, higher. Actually, that's what we are facing. So if you want to maybe apply for some tax return from the tax authority, the tax officer will tell you very forwardly, straightforward, say, yes, you can apply it. Of course, you can apply. You can make the filing, but we will make investigation. That's what we are facing for real case, right? In practice, it may be sensitive, but it's the truth. So actually, that asks us to maybe pay more attention on compliance rather than before, because that's what we are facing the pressure from the government, from the authority. So we will be challenged maybe one day from them for compliance, or if you follow the rules, if you follow the regulations. Yes.
I mean, a lot of aspects we already talked about. I mean, market access for SMEs in the future, yeah, but already now. But I think also like our attraction to new employees and so on and so forth. But there's two aspects I like to mention which we have not maybe discussed yet. One is companies. A lot of companies tell us we are kind of afraid of these audits happening. So there's auditors coming in, they're checking us regularly, more often than before here in China. And an audit usually is something where somebody sits there and asks you, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And so on and so forth. And then people, as you pointed out, are looking for information. They're running around, they're sweating usually, and looking for information, and then it becomes very stressful. If you're well, let's say, documented on ESG, on EHS, on what you need to be doing, you're turning around the conversation. You can basically, and this is also what we're seeing globally now with our clients, is they're basically asking the auditor, so tell me where I'm wrong. It's not so much about, hey, let's go through every requirement possible, because they're seeing a system. In our case, they're seeing how we're dealing with it, that there's professionalism. Yeah? It's not just, yeah, we want to be compliant, that's it. And I think this is something that can be quite important, because it's continuous. You have a system, you work it out, and you don't have to be stressed that tomorrow somebody knocks at the door and tries to even shut you down or limits your access to the world. So I think this is one aspect that I find very, very important. And also being aware. I mean, I remember when the corporate social credit system was launched here in China. I was reading also from the European Chamber, so sort of the report, and the main aspect was before we start judging and before we have an opinion about something, let's have a look what it really is. And I think this is where SMEs now have to be good at. Understand what does it mean to me as a company, and what can I showcase, and what can I do about this. Also be positive about this one. Tell your customers about this. Why not? Tell them we are doing all these efforts now. Tell your bank. Tell the people around, because there are more ways coming up where you can gain advantages of this, and we may today not even know where this is leading to. So I think this is two aspects where I would, apart from the others that were already mentioned, where I see that it makes sense to spend time on it and to bring your thoughts in your company together.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to follow up on that question instead of the one here on the card. In the business confidence survey, quite many companies reported that actually the different interpretation of a single rule at different times or from different people is kind of a challenge, quite a big challenge. And at least when I just listened to both of you, and you can just nod if you don't want to say too much, but my interpretation basically was, now if you have a good documentation in place and can show this also to the auditor, it might at least reduce the risk. It will not eliminate the risk, but at least big penalties or something like that, I would say, are less probable. Would you agree to that?
I mean, yeah, maybe just one sentence about this one. I think what we see with auditors is auditors provide recommendations. And sometimes even when the law changes quickly, and China is a place where laws are changing quite quickly, comparatively to other countries, there's a certain speed in developing new laws, changing laws, and so on. So it may even be the case that the auditor is not fully aware what this new law may mean. And frankly speaking, of all these laws that are there, it's quite hard for them to do that properly. So this is why, yes, turning around the conversation, saying this is what we're doing about this one, tell me where I'm wrong, is a much different approach than every time having to listen and then trying to make sense out of this. And maybe one thing about this is not particularly unique to China. We have in Italy and other countries in Europe, we're finding that there's local legislation, which is a bit different than the laws and regulations we see from the EU. And they also wonder, so which one do we have to follow? And there may not always be a straight answer to this one, but that's when you have to communicate. And if you show that I'm aware we have this regulation, I'm aware of the other one, we can't get them together. Yeah, it's a very detailed and specific communication you're doing, rather than talking like, oh, everything in EHS, we have no clue about this one. So I think taking the communication down to a certain level of detail helps also in finding solutions, rather than being too general. And yeah, that's maybe my take on this one.
Well, I'm an auditor, so yeah. So well-organized documents, of course, we welcome it. It will give us a good impression of your company, right? So you are really well organized and really your work is very good. But please focus on, we will focus on risky area. Do you know where your risky area is? Maybe we know it.
Thank you. And at least another jump that we had, again, referring to the business confidence study, is indeed the ambiguous rules and regulations, where also quite many companies here in China see a challenge that rules are sometimes not that clear. Maybe sometimes taking the help of an auditor who understands the rules better and can dig deeper here might be helpful, next to having a software solution, of course. You mentioned before already that the times have been a bit changing in terms of laws and regulations are applied much more strictly than maybe in the past. And I think we have seen that also in the last 10 years about the topic of corruption here in China. And for people who work in international companies who have like a European headquarter and a local company, there might be kind of different requirements to follow depending on the context. So basically, my question to you is, when we look at mooncakes, at dinner invitations, at gifts and so on, what advice regarding rules and regulations would you give to the local management here in China and to the European management, both as potential inviter if you invite other people, and invitee if somebody invites you? Very practical recommendations are highly welcome to bring it down to a working level.
Okay, so actually entertainment is very normal in China, right? It's culture, it's China culture background. So entertainment doesn't mean corruption, right? Of course. So it's very normal for us to, give some small gifts or, some mooncake to the client or supplier, right? In some holidays, it's just keep a good relationship with them, right? So I think the key here is how to control the entertainment process. One thing I would like to mention is that you should treat it as a company behavior, not personal behavior, right? The company should be in charge of the entertainment process. Don't do the entertainment through some salesperson. You should organize it from a company view. The company, all the entertainment, maybe the cards or maybe the mooncake coupon, something like that, should bought and arranged by the company. And also it should put in a budget in advance, right? And it should be processed and sent via company with company name, not personal name. Okay, that's just a small hint.
I mean, when it comes to let's say mooncakes, when it comes to gifts, yeah, there's a certain type, let's say, where compliance meets culture. Yeah? And here in China, maybe the mooncake, in Germany, maybe a Christmas gift you're giving to someone, maybe someone you've been working with for a long time, and so on. I would fully agree to what Ivy said. It's if internally the organization has made up their mind about how we're dealing with this, and they may give out a guideline. There's also in China, we find legal opinion about this. So there could be guys who say like up to a certain amount, yeah, this is quite okay to do, but be aware above this one, yeah, you're reaching, then it becomes maybe corruption. Also look at the interest. Is it about keeping a relationship, or is trying to take someone for a certain project or for a certain decision right in front of them to sort of get them to vote in your favor? Yeah. I think there's certain aspects you can look at when these things happen. But I fully agree that and this is why you can use also, and this is what's also in ESG under the G, it says very clearly, be aware of it, define your own guidelines on it, and also follow up on them. And I think especially the last one is, don't just believe and say like, oh, we wrote a guideline, this is our code of conduct. No, everybody's just doing it because that's what they, in the big handbook that you get when you sign a contract in China. Okay, now everybody knows, and as will be followed through. It's your job as a company to also have a look at it, to control, yeah, and have people also make them aware, maybe once a year or something. Yeah? Those kind of assessments you do internally. These are our rules and regulations, ours, yeah? And we want you to understand as an employee, as a worker, as a salesperson, as a manager, whoever it is. And I think this is your job to do as an organization. Right?
Thank you very much. I was looking in the direction of the timekeeper. I saw a sign. I think we are at the end. Yes. Okay. Then really, Finito, I did not see any questions online. The last question is, I think, very related to this one, so basically already answered. So really, thank you very much, Ivy. Thank you very much. And yeah, looking forward to the next panel together with you. Filippo, stage is yours again.
Okay, now it should work. So as I was saying, for the online audience, I'll leave the contact details of the panelists in case you want to further deepen your knowledge on some topics that were covered during today's meeting. While for the on-site audience, we are going to have a quick refreshment outside where you can discuss more about the topics that we explored today. So I think that this concludes the event. First of all, I want to thank our panelists and the moderator. I think that you deserve a very big round of applause. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion, so thank you very much for coming and sharing with us your insights on these topics. I also would like to thank the European Chamber for the organization of the event. I think that this collaboration is going further and further, and I'm very thankful. Especially representing the SME Center, I really want to thank you for the focus that you put on SMEs. That I think is something that's usually underrepresented and undershared during presentations, so thank you very much.